Welcome to On Tapes, a podcast about the physical medium of VHS tapes. My name's Rowan, and each week-ish, my co-host Mark and I will look at 3 tapes. One film which I've chosen, one film which he has chosen, and a third novelty tape, which we pick at random. It feels good to say that again.
It's been a while.
It's been a very long while. We haven't been able to record this. This whole podcast kind of started as something for Mark and I to do when we were stuck inside together, and then we were stuck inside apart.
Yeah, I picked Magnificent Ambersons 6 months ago, thinking that we were going to be doing it when Mag comes out.
Yeah.
It is now June of 2021.
It's May.
Sorry.
This could come out in June for all I know.
Exactly.
I'll keep that in. So what are we doing? You've mentioned one of the tapes already.
Yes, I just mentioned The Magnificent Ambersons, directed by Orson Welles, and Fallen Angels, directed by Wong Kar-Wai.
Wong?
That's how I pronounce the G. We've had this discussion many times that I say G's as G's.
It's a good way for people to distinguish us on the podcast, though, because our voices do sound really alike otherwise, obviously. When I say the word thing... Thing?
Thing.
Thing.
I'm saying it how you say it.
Thing.
I don't know. I'm not saying thinger.
Thing.
I'm just the bloody singer.
So what's our third tape?
It's Happy Monday's Party at G-Mex 1990.
Yes.
Close enough.
Our first concert tape since episode 1.
Yes.
And that went really well. Where are we kicking this thing off at?
Shall we start with The Magnificent Ambersons?
Tell me about this. This is your pick.
Yes. It's a 1942 film directed by Orson Welles. It's based on a novel by Booth Tarkington.
I did see that.
Yes, who was quite a well-acclaimed author in like the 1910s and 1920s, but since then has totally dropped off recognition.
I assume he's dead. I was going to say he's dead.
He's quite deceased. But at one point he was considered up there with Mark Twain as a chronicler of Midwest fortunes.
So what happened to his reputation?
He became perceived as someone who was quite stuffy and didn't have much social realist insight.
Interesting.
Yeah, which isn't what you'd think looking at this film.
No. So why did you pick this? You kind of hinted at it, but there's more reasons.
Because Orson Welles was in the news.
Yes, and I think you may have said last episode, this is the only Welles you haven't seen?
Yes, and I have now seen it.
Well done. Congratulations on rounding out your Welles filmography.
Welles done. I think one of the things that motivated me to pick a Welles film that wasn't Citizen Kane was that you had, when it came out, David Fincher going on about how he didn't like the reputation...
When Mank came out?
When Mank came out. He didn't like that Welles had gotten this reputation of being screwed over by the studios, and he was like, yeah, you can't discount the aspects of his own delusional hubris in terms of reason why his career declined. What a cunt. Yeah, Mank's script was written by David Fincher's father.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
What? Does he have any personal connection to anything?
No.
He's just...
Well, it was very influenced, I think, by Pauline Kael's essay Raising Cain, in which he argued that Mankiewicz was the driving force behind Citizen Kane and not Welles. That essay has been widely debunked. And I think Fincher was also complaining about Welles saying stuff like, you can learn cinematography in a day. But Fincher said that, yeah, he couldn't have made Citizen Kane without Greg Toland, but it was actually Greg Toland who told Welles, I can teach you cinematography in a day. And if you look at his films post-Kane that didn't have Greg Toland working on them, they all look as immaculate as Citizen Kane does.
I was thinking, watching this film, some of the cinematography in here, I think is better than Citizen Kane.
Oh, yeah, totally.
I feel like there's a lot more shots that I can recall from this than Kane, which is strange to say, because obviously they're not as iconic in the kind of overall scheme of film.
There's no screeching bird.
No, there is no screeching bird. The worst scene in cinematic history, the fucking bird.
Great scene.
But just going through this, there were so many points where I was like rattled by the cinematography.
Yeah, it doesn't look like a film from 1942.
No, God. I mean, thinking back, what else was coming out around that time, I'm like, it's so clear how influential Welles was just by watching this film especially. just by how everyone's nabbed from it. Even if you aren't doing it intentionally, you've taken from Welles.
I think one of the ones that I noticed was the tracking shots.
There's a lot of those.
Especially when they were walking down the street.
A lot of dolly stuff, yeah. They go on for quite a while. A lot of these go on for a while.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a lot of shots in here. I don't know how he does it, but there's this hanging sense in the air that something... I don't know. Like, not that it's a bad shot, but you could, this weird... At least I got this weird anxiety looking at some of these shots. And it's always these shots where I feel it, where he moves the camera mid-shot. Like, there's one on a stairwell of someone eavesdropping, looking down. And I'm like, this is such a strange shot. There's something off here. Like,
I think I remember the shot you're talking about. And the stairwell is kind of curving round, but it all feels flat.
Well, the stairwell, it's a circular stairwell, and he's looking at them, two people talking. And then the camera, like, tilts up, and you see someone eavesdropping. But, like, you're almost waiting in that shot. There's something just feels... Not that's a bad shot, but something just feels off. There's, like, a hanging sense of tension in the air. And when it moves, you're like, oh, God. It's such a strange sensation I don't think I've ever got from a film before.
It feels like it's not just there to convey information.
Yeah.
It's there to create an atmosphere.
Yeah, and without tipping its hat, it's just hinting at this thing to come. I don't know, it was incredible cinematography.
See, it reminded me quite a bit of a William Wyler film.
Ah, my boy.
Yeah, in terms of what it was about, a family.
I was thinking the
precipice.
same thing. I didn't pick him out as a specific reference point, but it did have, especially in the pacing, the early pacing, it felt like it was one of these like best years of our lives, where it covers someone, like this covers the relationships of a group for many years.
It's quite similar to Wyler's The Little Foxes, which it was negatively compared to on release.
That came out at the same time, right?
A year before.
Ah, okay.
Which I like as a film, but it's not... I say it's not Citizen Kane. It's not Citizen Kane. It's also not Magnificent Ambersons.
But I see the comparison there with Wyler, just in how, yeah, as I said, in how it was setting up character relationships, definitely like that. But it doesn't really do what I was... Sorry, it doesn't really hint at what I was saying. No, it does. I was going to say it doesn't follow them for a period of time, it jumps, but once it jumps, it hangs on them, so ignore me.
Should we describe the plot? I've realised we haven't mentioned the plot yet.
Feel free to.
It's about a family called the Ambersons, who
are magnificent.
Quite magnificent, in the Midwest, and their declining fortunes over a period of time.
Sorry, you said Midlands there. There's a point, I forget where it is, but it's a sign, I think, that describes it as the Midlands.
It's from round my way.
I was going to say, it's like, oh, it's Mark's neck of the woods. Because I didn't know much about it. I was like, is this set in the Midlands?
So it's about the declining fortunes of a Midwestern semi-aristocratic family called the Ambersons. And specifically there's George Amberson, who is in love with a girl called Lucy Morgan, and her father is a car inventor.
Yes, he is. His occupation is just inventor.
Yes, played by Joseph Cotton.
Joey C.
I like Joseph Cotton, good actor.
It was weird to see him playing such an old character in this.
Yeah, I think he was much younger than he was playing.
Yeah. Much like Welles in Kane.
Indeed. Good friends, Joseph Cotton and Orson Welles, of course. So he has a kind of feud with his father-in-law, played by Joseph Cotton.
Well, not full father, like father of the woman.
Father of his bird.
Father of his bird. Great Vampire Weekend album, that.
It's a very strangely structured film. It's kind of just a bunch of stuff happening, isn't it? That's partly, I imagine, due to the cuts.
Yeah, it is kind of stuff just happening, but there does seem to be like it's stuff just meandering, if anything.
Yes.
There's a good driving force through it, but I don't know, it's driving in the sense of it's just going along.
It definitely
Which isn't what driving is, but you know what I mean. It's got forward momentum, but just at a docile pace.
I think structurally it's kind of appropriate to the plot, because it's about decay, and the plot kind of peters out.
Mm-hmm. It really does. By the end of things, it's just people talking.
Yeah. Well,
it's stuff happening, but it's a lot of people discussing the stuff happening.
Yeah, I mean, the final scene was attack on.
Yeah, like you can obviously you can tell it's quite infamous.
Yeah. Welles was in Brazil when the film was being edited.
Good for him.
He was on a goodwill mission that he'd been sent on by FDR to promote US interests abroad and make friends with the good neighbours policy.
Okay, cool.
So he was there in Brazil making this film, and he sent back the rushes to the
studio,
the government. No, actually, no, it was RKO who was.
Yeah.
RKO was the one producing the Brazilian film, but he antagonised RKO quite a bit because he had a lot of footage of revelers in the carnival and a lot of black and white people playing together, and they didn't like that. Didn't like seeing black and white people reveling as equals. And also, he was taking a lot of time filming this stuff. They didn't like it. They didn't like how real it was. Like all the deprivation that he was showing.
Yeah.
So they were already annoyed at him. Then they released Magnificent Ambersons in theatres. The public hates it. And they're like, okay, we need to fix this film. The public doesn't like it.
So it was out in... The Wells cut was in the cinema?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
It got theatrically released. At least to test audiences.
Okay.
So they go to Robert Wise, who was editing the film, be like, you need to sort this out. And he's like, all right, I'll chop off half an hour and film a new ending. Which
half hour? Is it... Because obviously I knew there was massive cuts going through it. Was it just the whole end that was cut off? Or was it like 5-minute sections throughout?
I think bits and pieces, but especially the end. Because it was supposed to end with a very melancholic scene where Eugene visits the aunt, Fanny, in like a dodgy-looking boarding house.
Okay.
Because she's gone insane over the course of the film.
Okay.
In one of the best scenes. And apparently it was supposed to be the best scene of the picture according to Welles. And the scene that sums up the entire film, get rid of that. I saw an interview where Welles was talking about about it being cut. And there was an interview with Robert Wise in this. And he was like, well, what could we do? We had to do something. The picture was bombing. I don't think, it's still revered as a classic, so we didn't destroy it totally. And then it cuts to Welles. It cuts to Welles after that being like, it's destroyed, it's gone, my film is ruined.
What does that mean? Like, saying that, it wasn't destroyed completely, it's like, do you know anything?
It's
like taking a jacket, cutting the entire back off and be like, it's still a jacket.
Seeing that interview made me lose quite a lot of respect for Robert Wise.
Yeah,
I really fucked over Welles.
Yeah.
Bogdanovich was being interviewed in the documentary as well, of course, and he was slagging off Robert Wise.
Good old Bogdanovich. One of the parts that was edited really well, in my opinion, was the beginning.
Oh yeah, that
whole beginning.
That was really funny.
It kind of reminded me of Citizen Kane, which is not surprising, obviously, with the whole kind of it catching you up.
Yeah,
like the news on the march.
Sort of putting you into an entire period of history.
Yeah, it's like, here's a fun montage of the fashion of the time. Here's an Orson Welles cameo.
Here's Joseph Cotton trying on a hat in an amusing way.
Yeah, I really liked that, and it was a very pleasant montage. I
also liked that scene.
Set the standards really high, I think.
Yeah, it was quite funny, that whole opening section.
The whole at least the first half of the film, I thought was great.
Me too.
Just in terms of, because obviously the pacing seemed to still be there, and I feel like it was setting itself up to be this, to build up and crescendo, but
But then they screwed him over.
Yeah. Did you like all the shadow play in this film?
Yeah.
A lot of scenes had shadows hanging over it, especially shots of the Ambersons themselves. Kind of this foreboding doom almost.
It didn't give you a sense of the Ambersons mansion geographically, I feel like.
No, you're right.
But it kind of felt like the entire mansion had just these closed little spaces within it.
To me, it felt like the building was kind of engulfing them?
Yeah.
And consuming them, I guess you'd say?
Yeah, it was very closed space, especially the scene where Eugene and George have the fight at the dinner table. Everything there is so dark.
Yeah, there's one shot, I forget who it is, I think it might be George and Fanny towards the end, where the room they're in is completely dark. They're walking through it, and they come to stand at this window, it's letting light into them, and I'm like, this is kind of where they are at this point, just in the darkness looking out.
It's interesting.
Did you say damn? Damn.
It's interesting comparing those shots to the final scene that wasn't shot by Welles.
Oh, the fucking hospital corridor?
It's just a bland hospital corridor where they're like, well, that resolves that situation.
That's the end of that chapter.
The end. It builds up to quite a very pessimistic ending. Because The Ambersons have an aunt who is a bit insane. Is an aging spinster, played by Agnes Moorehead, who is really good.
Here's one for you. Is Fanny short for anything? I'm trying to figure this out.
Is it short for Elizabeth? Is it one of those things?
Isn't everything short for Elizabeth?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things.
It's like the catch-all, yeah.
Yeah, Buffy is short for Elizabeth.
Beth.
Liz.
Eliza. I don't know if that's one. I'm sure it originated from that.
Speaking of Agnes Moorehead's character, I saw a very good interview on the Dick Cavett show where Moorehead was talking to Dick about the performance that she gave in the scene where, towards the end, where she collapses against the boiler.
Yeah.
And talks about how the boiler is cold.
Did Dick tell her that he was also cold?
You can really relate to that. I'll link this in the Twitter page, but she said that Wells told her to play it like an insane woman, so she did. And then he said, no, play it like you're completely inebriated, so she did. And then he said, no, play it like a little girl, so she did.
Okay.
And then at this point she's like, what does he want from me? I'm doing it all these different ways. And then he goes, no, play it. And then she gave the performance that you see in the film.
I like that.
Because you want a combination of all of those different elements. It really does come through.
Yeah. Bit of a waste of film though if they filmed it though. Back in these days. that was me playing the role of the studio exec, not understanding art.
The studio the audience don't get it.
A question about the ending. The whole Orson Welles wrap-up part.
Yes.
What was the deal with that? It sounded like a track from like an early 2000s hip-hop album where someone's just like shouting out their crew.
I really like that ending.
I was thinking, when would they maybe have recorded this? Like, surely it was before the ending was chopped off originally.
Probably.
Because he seems quite pleased with himself, proud. You wouldn't be if you just watched the last few minutes of this film.
No. Well, apparently he...
But if you're saying, I didn't realise it had already hit cinemas before that, I assume it was already on that original version, which clears that up, I suppose.
I assume so. Well, apparently he was accused of hubris and egotism with that ending. It's like, oh, look at me, I'm Orson Welles, making it all about me.
But the whole thing is him talking about other people.
Well, yeah, exactly. And also, he was like, people know me from the radio, I'll end it like one of my radio shows.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. I mean, kind of makes sense.
Yeah. That's a neat ending.
It's not unlike the closing credits you get for some films where it's got someone's face and their name right next to it. Like, I know the ending of Dazed and Confused is like this, where it's got someone's face and their name.
Yeah.
It's just an audio version of that.
It feels like the opposite of egotism to me, because he's shouting out all the people who worked on it.
There is a bit where he's like, and it was written and directed by me.
Orson Welles.
Yeah, so that bit's a bit indulgent, but you can excuse that.
They do feel like a team, though. He does say this was a Mercury production.
He does.
And most of the actors had worked with him on the stage.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, just before he died, 1 year before he died in 1985, someone had discovered that the film was basically lost forever. And this guy says, I forget who it was, but he says, I would have never given Orson that answer, that it was all gone, unless I was pretty sure it was all gone. I had to look him in the eye and tell him. He broke down and cried in front of me. He said it was the worst thing that had ever happened in his life.
That's horrible.
It is.
Especially when you know how many of his other works just kind of didn't see their full potential.
Yeah.
Again, for things that were out of his control.
Well, I've seen people be like, oh yeah, he was just incapable of finishing things due to a personality defect. Which is just insane insane of a thing to say. And also, if you watch all of his other films, they're all also masterpieces, pretty much. I wouldn't even put, Citizen Kane and Ambersons in the top 5.
Yeah.
Chimes at Midnight, Othello, The Trial, Other Side of the Wind.
I've only seen 4 of them now, but I've enjoyed all the ones that I've seen.
They're all winners.
Yeah, they are. He don't miss. He really don't miss.
I just love talking about Orson Welles. As a man and a character and an artist, I just like his presence and existence.
Yeah.
I just, if I see an interview by him that I haven't seen, I'm like, I'll watch that. That'll be fun to hear him talk.
I assume you enjoyed researching this episode then.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And that's why for next week I have a tape of Touch of Evil.
Oh boy, I watched that quite recently. Before we wrap up on Ambersons, what did you think of the performances?
Good. They were all kind of a bit, I don't want to say quirky, it's not the word, but like, there was something to them. Again, in this day, a lot of these family type epic dramas or whatever, a lot of them are played kind of very down.
Yeah, very realist.
Yeah.
Method acting type things.
But everyone kind of played off each other. Definitely everyone played off each other very well.
Yeah, it kind of felt like they were all having fun.
Yeah, again, as you said, if they're all kind of, you mentioned some of these guys may have played opposite each other on the stage.
Yeah, this was Agnes Moorehead's second film after Citizen Kane, but she'd worked with him on, stuff like
how these actors
Caesar.
work together?
I assume so.
On the stage, because that definitely feels like the case.
Yeah, and obviously
with the way they were playing off each other.
Joseph Cotton's his old stage buddy.
Yeah.
I was that keen on Tim Holder's George Amberson.
He did have the kind of entitled bratty bit.
He was definitely a weenie.
Yeah, but it was almost like, because obviously you see George at the very beginning, and he is very much that brat. But you see, it's the kind of guy he is. Like you see these people still now. It's like these entitled, like silver spoon in their mouth kind of guys who've now just kind of entered society. Like this bratty kid who has to grow up, and you're like, oh, that's what these people turn out to be.
That's quite thematic with Wells's life. Someone who is constantly pushing against the tides of history. And that's what a lot of his films are about. That's what Citizen Kane's about. It's what, Chimes at Midnight's about. It's people who are dragged along by the pull of history.
Yeah.
And then in the end, he's literally run over by history. Damn these blasted automobiles.
Yeah. Skirt.
And of course, as well, speaking of Wells' thematic preoccupations, he was from the Midwest. And he often said that he had a big attachment to it. From Wisconsin originally.
Cheesehead.
Anything else to say about Magnificent Ambersons, Rowan?
I would like to point out something at the very start of this tape, because we haven't mentioned if there was anything at the beginning. There was no trailer for anything. Again, I think this tape, it was released in the 90s, I think late 90s, this one.
It's often that way with these classic film releases.
Yeah, they kind of just are chucked out. I mean, don't want to stereotype people who watch Orson Welles films. You think they might be older, they may not be as inclined to go to the cinema as much, so you don't want to stick the trailer for, I don't know, Speed at the beginning of Magnificent Ambersons.
No.
But there was a mention of macrovision at the start of it. Do you know anything about macrovision in relation to VHS tapes?
It was a thing that was used to prevent people from copying tapes and copying DVDs later on.
And how did that work?
It meant that if you copied tapes from DVDs, because you said this was released in the late 90s.
Yeah, I think it was 98.
I assume it was when DVD was just starting. If you tried to copy a DVD onto a tape...
It was 98.
Which is a bizarre thing to try and do.
But if you want to give it to your friend who isn't technologically as advanced as you.
No, who doesn't own an automobile or a DVD player. It would make the copy unwatchable. Apparently, the process was that they'd add pulses to the video signals that would negatively impact the circuit of the recording device.
I don't know if this explains it, but there were points in this tape where it would go from being really kind of grainy and like stuff on the screen to being quite clean. We don't claim to be VHS experts on this podcast, just VHS enjoyers.
We're always learning, though.
We are always learning, along with you, our audience.
Apparently the last film to use the macrovision process was Children of Men.
Jeez. So I guess it's stuck with tapes. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Why would you get rid of something like that when VHS is very much becoming the prevalent thing? It is funny, though, the thought of that, like, oh, I need to get my DVD onto a tape in 2006.
If that's the process, why was it on the tape, not on the DVD? I guess you can't copy tape to tape then.
Yeah.
Anyway, shall we move on to Fallen Angels?
Let's move on to Fallen Angels. This was Wong Kar-Wai's follow-up to Chungking Express. This came out in 95. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it was meant to be somehow part of Chungking Express. This is me going off of when I studied... Chungking Express, fun fact, was the first film that Mark and I studied at uni.
Well, they're quite similar films, these two, compared to his other films. Obviously, a lot of his films have the same stylistic ticks.
Yeah.
But those two in particular feel like a duo.
Well, see, I've only seen the three. I've seen these two, and then In the Mood for Love. And In the Mood for Love, as good a film as it is, classic, whatever, it seems so dry in comparison to two of these films.
Yeah.
Which is intentional. Obviously, watching that film, you're like, you can't really zhuzh this up and convey the same things. It's meant to be quite dry. But these films, especially this one, it's just so kinetic. The visuals, even the plot, it's special.
Well, those two films definitely feel like the kind of mid-90s Asian film that would have been released by Miramax. As Chungking Express was. No, this one wasn't.
Okay.
Or possibly on Tarantino's Rolling Thunder release, which I believe would always begin with, "Hey, this is Quentin Tarantino here. This is a Rolling Thunder picture."
We have to seek out one of those. But yeah, I much prefer him when he's trying a lot of stuff. One of the things that jumps out in this is the handheld camera stuff, which with VHS very much made it feel like it was just like people with a camera.
I really liked, because I'm not that keen on some Wong Kar-Wai films, but seeing this on VHS was a revelation, and I really feel like if I had been about in the 90s and picked this up on VHS, I would have been like, whoa. I
know. It definitely is. We've talked about before how some films you want kind of dirtier, if that makes sense. This definitely works with it.
It was so grimy.
And funnily enough, I think I mentioned this at the end of last episode, but this tape was brand new when I bought it. It was new in box. The tape was still sealed. So I was literally the first person to watch it, and you were literally the second. But
it was like one of those things in the 90s where you're like, "Hey, dude, you gotta see this film I just picked up."
Yes. And it's probably the best. I want to say use of VHS, but I mean, VHS was the kind of thing you had to do back then. But it's kind of the way I would want to watch it, honestly. Having seen it now, if I were watching this in super, 4K, whatever, you lose something, I would think.
I agree. It's funny, because I feel like Wong Kar-Wai has this reputation these days, off the back of In the Mood for Love, of being this, art house prestige type guy.
Yeah.
When it came out, he was very much considered one of these Asian MTV anime adjacent type guys. In fact, I've got a couple of reviews here.
Okay.
From the time. This is what...
from the Times?
Yeah, no. Well, Chicago Sun-Times.
Hey.
So this is what the People's critic Roger Ebert said. "It's kind of exhausting and kind of exhilarating. It will appeal to the kinds of people you see in the Japanese animation section of the video store, with the sleeves cut off so you can see their tattoos, and to those who subscribe to more than 3 film magazines, and to members of garage bands, and to art students. It's not for your average moviegoers, unless, of course, they want to see something new."
I don't like that he was going at my people.
The anime fans?
No, the art students.
The Japanese animation fans.
What was it? Art students and garage band people?
Yeah. People who subscribe to more than 3 film magazines.
This is bringing out his anti-video games part of Ebert here.
Oh, it definitely is.
Looking down his nose type stuff.
And and singling out people who watch Japanese animation, that Akira film that I've heard of.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously saying it with some disgust in his voice, but I do kind of get where he's coming from. In the vibe. I mean, I wouldn't say that's still the case. I don't think I would tie this to those kind of subcultures now.
No, not retrospectively. Well, there's a slightly more literate review here by G. Hoberman from The Village Voice that describes it as the acme of neo-new waveism, the ultimate in MTV alienation, the most visually voluptuous flick of the fin de siècle, a pyrotechnical wonder about mystery, solitude, and the irrational love of movies that pushes Wong's style to the brink of self-parody.
Okay.
So you can see what Roger Ebert was getting at without really understanding the scene. I think Holman understands it more.
Yeah, I don't disagree with a lot of things mentioned there, but it's just odd. I wouldn't describe it in either of those ways.
I can kind of see what it is, because this is very much the kind of film you can see people going, "Oh, it's just style over substance." It's just like how people would complain about something like Natural Born Killers at the time.
Okay.
And say, Stone, just all style, constantly editing, so in your face.
I guess this is just me. I wouldn't be starting off opposed to that. Like, I feel like some people go into a film being like, if that is the case, they write that off completely.
Yeah.
Which I would never do. I don't think you would either.
No, obviously not.
But I don't think it is that. I feel like there's a lot to this film, substance-wise.
Yeah, definitely.
Even if it's not right in front of you, I feel like depending... It's one of those films that I can see a lot of people latching onto, which I think they have, just based on the kind of, style, but also the kind of themes to it, the relationship with characters. I would say that this is kind of like the cool depression to Chungking Express's like sweet depression. Like, they both deal with this kind of melancholic, depressed vibes, but this one it's differently played cool, whereas, you know what I mean?
You're saying that Fallen Angels feels more like the kind of film that's trying to be cool, whereas the Chungking Express just...
No, I'm just saying that Chungking Express definitely has like a softer vibe to it. One of the...
Yeah, it's more romantic.
Romantic, yes. I don't know if... Yeah, compared to the relationships in this film, yes. But just the overall kind of feeling of it.
It's more... I'd say totally it's more softer.
Chungking is?
Yeah, it has a sort of pleasantness.
Yeah, you can definitely see that in the music, especially. Like, you think of Chungking Express, there's it's Mamas and Papas.
Yeah.
That's throughout that. And this, there's a lot of, like, synth stuff in it, right?
Yeah.
In this one? I'm trying to think, there's some other kind of dark-sounding music in it, but...
This does feel more abrasive.
In terms of its place in culture, Chungking Express kind of just seems like it's just beneath the surface. Like, I mean, the characters in there are like police officers, right? Yeah. Or at least one of them's a police officer and someone who works in a store or a cafe. Whereas in this, it's like your people on the street, your hitmen. Like, there's more a feeling of like an underbelly vibe to this. Like, that's Chungking Express is like the fringes of society. Not even the fringes, just kind of the edges of society. That's the same thing. Just kind of the little parts of society, whereas this feels way off to the side. This is dealing with people you wouldn't come across. Most people wouldn't come across day to day.
A phrase that was in my head for a little bit of it that I think you'll understand. I hope our audience gets what I mean by this. The cinematic equivalent of Burial's Untrue.
Yeah. Now it's hitting me why I like this so much. Yeah. I don't know if I've mentioned that. I love this film.
Yeah, no, I can tell.
Going into it as someone, I mean, I really like Chungking Express, and I always wondered if, because as I mentioned, it was the first film we studied at uni, I was like, is it just like biased because of that? And I haven't watched it in full since we studied at uni. I'd love to go back and watch it, but seeing this, I'm like, yeah, I probably would like Chungking Express if I went back to it.
Those are the kind of films that people really like. You either like or you really, really love.
Yeah.
I think, much like Burial. Well, I mean, there was even a scene in this, speaking of Burial, where the guy is standing outside McDonald's at the middle of the night.
There is, yeah. That's like the sign in the background and the staircase.
Yeah.
That's an interesting comparison. I really like that comparison.
Thank you. It's very much, speaking of postmodernism and globalization, which are elements of a lot of Wong Kar-Wai's film, and as we've spoken about, has quite an international cast. Fallen Angels. You've got Takeshi Kaneshiro alongside Hong Kong actors like Leon Lai and Michelle Reyes, who's Portuguese. That globalization element really gets picked up in Happy Together, which is sort of divided between...
That's the one following this?
Yeah. Which is partly set in Hong Kong, partly set in Buenos Aires.
Okay.
And is also about sadness and alienation and being alone no matter where you are.
He's one of those guys that often hops on those projects where there's like multiple directors around the world contributing to stuff, isn't he?
Yeah, stuff like Eros.
Yeah, I think he's on that. That might be the only one, but I feel like he's definitely always up for that kind of thing. Yeah. Especially with him, I mean, his connections to the West through the discovery of these films over here.
Do you want to talk a little bit more about the cinematography? Because this is one of the...
I would. I'd like to...
This is one of the films he had Christopher Doyle as his DP on, who he collaborated with a lot.
Yeah.
The Australian guy who works in Hong Kong now. I really like Christopher Doyle because he's really aggressively anti the Chinese incursion into Hong Kong in terms of how it's sort of sense of the film industry.
Cool.
And now he makes very independent films.
Is that what he's doing now?
Yeah, he's still...
I had no clue. So not working with Wong Kar-Wai then?
Yeah, he recently made a film with Ai Weiwei, the Chinese distant artist.
Okay.
Called Human Flow. And I think he's worked on a couple of things. He did the cinematography on a Jodorowsky film as well.
Interesting.
And also on a Mark Cousins, apparently.
Of course.
So he's getting about. I know he's directed a few.
One of the things about this is its setting that I quite liked. I feel like the phrase, I'm sure you've heard the phrase, like, the city is a character.
Yes.
Which I don't like.
No.
I feel like, especially in this case, it doesn't do it justice, because it's a misreading or understanding of what a character is, almost.
I agree.
It's to... You know when you're playing Yu-Gi-Oh?
Just a sec. Would you care to continue that thought?
You know when you those cards you can play that like boost everything.
Yeah.
So like I forget the names of them, but there'll be like a card you can play. It's like a picture of a big wave. You put it in the corner, and it boosts the attack of all your water types.
Yeah.
I feel like that's more of. I'm losing it. It's kind of like that to me, where like the setting just kind of raises everything a little bit.
Okay.
And the saying it's a character is something, I don't know, it's a weird piece of film criticism that
I think it's just a meaningless cliche. That's the thing.
Yeah. It comes up and it's like, yeah, it just gets bounded about too much now.
I mean, I know what people mean by it.
Me too, but it's not what they're saying.
No.
It's definitely enhanced. It touches everything,
Yeah.
which a character doesn't do. It's hangs over everything, and one of the things that's tied with that cliche is the fact that it is unavoidable. If you change it to a different city, it's a completely different film, which is the case, yes, with this. I don't know. For this to work, you have to be in a deep, deep underbelly, and I feel like Hong Kong is like perfect for that.
Yeah.
It's like a character. But what do you think? How did you feel about the settings, the super dark parts of things?
It's so hard to get a sense of it just because of how it's filmed. Like, it barely... Like, everything is so shot in such big close-ups.
Yes. So when you do see shots like that one of the McDonald's sign,
yeah,
really illuminating the background. Because, yeah, Hong Kong, you do think of, like, lights.
Yeah.
But this is, again, the underbelly, dingy.
Are there any scenes set during the day?
No, I don't think so. The closest you get to, like, super bright is the artificials of the tunnel.
Yeah, it really feels like an endless night.
Yeah. Which is the vibe I always want. Maybe I should move. I would never, because there's no cities there.
No.
But the places where it's like, you don't get sunlight at all.
I don't think you want to move to Hong Kong these days.
No, I'm okay.
All right.
I'd like to visit Hong Kong.
It's probably not the same, is it?
No, but say you've been there.
Yeah.
Did you like the VHS stuff in here when he's running about with his camera?
Yes.
I have a lot of random notes, but I did like that when he has a camera. I'm always get a little chuckle, get a bit of joy when I see VHS content in the films we watch.
Having only seen this film on VHS, it's hard for me to imagine what the colours are like.
Especially these days, since they're all green.
Indeed. Honestly, this is probably better watching this than the new restoration.
I mean, I was thinking, I'd love to see a side-by-side of the final scene or whatever, towards the end, the tunnel scene where it's all green.
Yeah.
I'm like, is that what the whole film looks like now?
I imagine so. Because this film was so yellow and red.
Yeah.
I don't want it to be green.
Darkness.
Michelle Reyes' character was very cool.
Yeah.
They were all quite cool.
Yes, I said, it's cool depression.
Yeah.
I mean, even like, they don't seem cool, but the way they're portrayed is very cool.
No. These actors in this film, I feel like, haven't really... None of them are as big as the actors from Chungking Express. There's no Tony Leung or Fei Wong in this.
Yeah. I have a note, going back to speaking about Chungking Express, there's a section here where they talk about pineapple, out-of-date pineapple, that I thought was a fun callback to Chungking Express.
It's getting closer. Reunification. Yeah, speaking of the pineapple, because Homer mentioned fin de siècle, it's not just for Hong Kong, is it? It's not just the coming millennium, it's the coming handover.
Ah, that was very soon after this, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
So that's really, I guess, getting closer. Really feels like something's going to happen soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about that during it.
Yeah.
We've talked before about Hong Kong action.
Yes.
Especially in Bullet in the Head and the kind of gunplay in that. How did you feel about the gun scenes in this?
They all had kind of a John Woo vibe.
I think they were much more frenetic than that. Because the scenes where he's like doing his hits, it's super like cut. And it's not even like modern Western cuts, like, you know, the classic take and jump over the fence nonsense. It's not even that. It's just cuts from all over, just kind of, it's capturing a moment in time. So it's like one moment, cut. Like all the stuff going on. I really liked it. It seemed different to me than a lot of other Hong Kong stuff, but still at its core, kind of from the same place. It's
less geographically sort of coherent than, say, The Killer or Hard Boiled.
Definitely. It's more just, this is the moment.
Yeah. You're not really supposed to be following the action.
No. You're
just getting that sort of thing in your face.
But it's not like it's not like the modern not following the action in like a Marvel film or whatever, where it's just stuff.
Yeah.
There is definitely something to it.
All the colours are so saturated in this film, it just makes me... It doesn't sometimes make you feel a bit sick.
I could see that.
There's like the yellows, the reds, they have a kind of nauseous vibe to them, and especially when it's all in close-ups.
We mentioned some of the long shots in Ambersons. There's one I really liked in here. It's towards the end, maybe it's not. It's when they're talking in the cafe or a bar about they want to find Blondie. And there's that guy in the bar who's also named Blondie. And they're talking to him. It goes from talking to him to a fight kicking off. They're sitting there, and then it's still the same shot, and then it goes from him, he falls in at the end. It was a very interesting shot, and it was mostly in one place, but it was more the stuff going on around the frame that was important, which I thought was kind of fun.
That kind of layered framing is kind of a Christopher Doyle signature, though, isn't it? That kind of step framing.
Yeah, you like that. You like your frames within frames.
I really do.
When we lived together, you used to talk about looking from the kitchen to the living room and being like, Rowan, look at the frames here. I'm seeing you through 2 frames. 3 frames it was.
It was. The hallway door had a sort of... Shut up.
Shut up who?
Me.
Oh.
Apparently, I've just Googled this. It does say Wong Kar-Wai says Chungking Express and Fallen Angels are one film that's 3 hours long. To him. I don't know. That would be too much.
It would,
cinema.
Especially because I think they're totally like siblings more than anything. Like, Chungking Express is the kind of romantic, like hopeless romantic older brother, while this is the more rebellious, kind of edgy sibling who doesn't want to live in its older sibling's shadow.
They're like a duo of Pokemon games.
Yeah, except more different.
Yeah.
With actual differences, not just some of the... No. That would be like if it was the exact same film, but like 4 of the characters who speak one line are different. That would be like 2 Pokemon games.
Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah, I don't know. It just gave off a really nice energy to me. It's kind of relatable because again, this is another thing. I always seem to be the one who draws in these universal themes, but like, there is like a weird sadness that I assume we all kind of carry about knowing that you will never know someone you once knew like you did.
Yeah, I understand what you mean.
You touch on the end, like just people you've known in the past that you may have been close to or whatever, that you think like, at the time you knew them really well, but now you just don't know them at all. Which is, I think, something that everyone can kind of draw on from their own experiences, and just it's not even like a real sadness. It's like a weird sadness that you never think about, but you kind of are aware of.
It do be like that.
I'm glad you could contribute that, Mark. Should we get ready to party down?
Yeah, speaking of mid-90s energy and vibes, here's the Happy Mondays.
Early 90s. Mid-90s vibes are black grape vibes, which you can check out our thoughts on one of our old episodes.
I think 8.
Okay. The Brit Awards episode. This tape. So it's Happy Mondays, Party G-Mex 25390. I believe that is March 25th. So this, as I said, is our first concert tapes in Slam Richie. I think this one went better.
I agree. I have to say, the effects were on about the same level.
Effects of anything were worse, but
Why wasn't Bez dancing on the ceiling?
Bez dancing is kind of the effect. That's all the special effect you need. It's just ecstasy and Bez.
We were not taking ecstasy during the viewing of this tape.
No, definitely not. This tape, though, is quite interesting. You can't read anything on the back of it, despite there being quite a lot of text, because it's small and yellow.
It's
and
like the Happy Mondays. You can't hear what Sean Ryder's saying.
Yeah. But it's quite nice. It's a black box, and the thing that annoys me is it's one of these ones where the spine, the text on it is upside down.
Like an artificial line DVD.
Yeah, you know the sort.
Twisting my melon, man. Call the cops! Do you want to give us the track list, Rowan? I think it's quite a mix of their repertoire.
We start with Rave On, then it is Do It Better, Tart Tart, Step On, Performance, Hallelujah, Clap Your Hands, Cuff Damn, Lazyitis, 24-Hour Party People, Mad Cyril, God's Cop, and God's Cop was the start of the encore, and it finished with Rope for Luck.
Much like listening to a Happy Mondays album, seeing a Happy Mondays live set, you really realise how similar all of their songs are.
I could see that criticism. But
then again, if you're on ecstasy, who cares?
It's one of those things where it's just like it's a vibe, man. It's a mood you settle into. And it's, once you're like, I'll say this, Bombed is one of my favourite albums. It's really grown on me since hearing it.
See, that's the one that I like less, just because Martin Hannett's production just swills all together. I like the first one, Scroll on the G-Bed,
but
and
you know
Pills
me.
and Thrills.
You know me. All my favourite albums, you can't hear the vocals on because they're mixed so low.
That's true.
That's how I just like my music.
I like going with the flow of the vocals.
There are, again, I think the third album, Pills and Thrills, is way too clean for me.
Fair enough.
The fact they didn't get too poppy, but they went poppier. Which I don't know if that's the reason I don't like it. It's just, I don't know. I just prefer Bombed.
Well, my favourite song by them is 24-Hour Party People, and that's one of their most distinctive songs, and that's very vocal-led.
The stage production for this was also, I thought we were going to compare it to Lionel Richie a lot, was very low-key. Even for them, who they're known for their kind of laid-back demeanour, they did just kind of stumble out on stage and then just sing and meander about the stage.
All you need is bass.
And ecstasy. They were drinking the whole time, though, which was nice.
Yeah, Sean was drinking out of a styrofoam cup.
From a bottle that seemed to be some sort of fizz.
Yeah.
Some sort of champagne or something.
And then eventually Rowetta came on stage.
She did. So she came out for her song, really, for Step On. She had a right good dance with Bez. They were kind of face-to-face dancing. But later on, she ended up doing the same thing with Sean. It kind of reminded me of this one time I was in a nightclub with my friend. We were waiting. It's a nightclub with 2 floors. We were waiting downstairs to leave for whatever reason, and there was this woman dancing with this one guy, and we're like, wow, she's really going at it, dancing with this guy. He was kind of into it, dancing with her. But then, as we were kind of just watching from the other side of the bar, she stops dancing with this guy, and she starts dancing with this other guy, and they start really going at it. And then she goes back to the original guy, and we're like, whoa, what is this drama unfolding? That's what this Happy Mondays concert reminded me of.
I'm glad you brought that to the table.
Yeah, no, it was quite fun. Everyone seemed to be quite in a good mood.
Yeah.
Everyone was really going for it. I feel like this is a Manchester concert, right?
Yeah.
Going for their home audience. I feel like they really...
All the people they interviewed were definitely Manx.
They were. That was the other thing. The very beginning of the tape, they interviewed like 3 concert goers and 2 police officers who didn't know who they were.
Yeah, the concert goes like, yeah, it's just such great energy, man.
Good Mank. Mank!
We don't know what the connection is before we start these tapes.
That's always the fun part. And as we all know, Manky... I have no way of connecting this to Fallen Angels.
Oh, you're twisting my melon, man.
Oh.
Yeah, then he cuts the cops like, don't know who they are.
Yeah, and then it just goes, oh, cool. And then it cuts to them backstage, but half the screen is purple.
Yeah.
The lower half of the screen, it was black and white footage, the lower half of the screen just had a purple tinge to it.
Yeah, and Sean Ryder's just there swaying.
He sways a lot. He does a lot of swaying, and I think by the midpoint, by clap your hands, he's just having a wee seat on the stage. But he gets back up. He starts going for it again.
I mean, Bez was quite tired as well, as you imagine. He was just crouching like a little gremlin.
He did dance the whole time, though. He danced the whole time. By the end of it, you could see that his clothes were sticking to him.
Yeah,
sweat, and he just stripped down to his underwear on his way out the stage.
And then you were like, hey, the men in white are taking him away.
There was a man dressed in all white taking him off the stage.
He's keeping fit nowadays, of course.
He is. You put me onto this. What's our friend Bez up to these days?
Apparently his doctor says he's not very healthy, so he's doing fitness regimes during COVID.
Our thoughts are with Bez, though.
Very much so.
We would not like to lose this national treasure.
Never. He says that Bez says, yeah, it's very difficult to keep fit these days, especially at this difficult time of lockdown. So I'm gonna put you on a training regime.
This is on his YouTube channel or his Twitter? Where are these videos?
On YouTube, that he's showing them.
Okay.
Perhaps I'll put a link to the Bez YouTube channel.
Please do.
On Twitter.
Please do. The crowd at this concert were very much just kind of having fun.
Yeah.
I don't want to be one of those people like, oh, people on their phones at concerts these days. But the whole vibe of it was very much just like a nightclub. Like, everyone was just Bez dancing. It wasn't like people... There's no mosh pits. At some point, it would cut to the audience and there'd be like the parts where the audience wasn't bunched up, but it wasn't like a mosh pit. It was just people having space to flail their arms.
This is what I said to you. People say Bez doesn't do anything, but he's the audience surrogate.
Yes.
He's the one we relate to. People...
He's our eyes.
You can't relate to Sean Ryder. He's impenetrable.
He is.
Get into his mind, it's difficult. Bez, it's all on the surface. It's physicality.
The only kind of fancy stage production we get in this is occasional kind of fireworks.
Yeah.
It begins with fireworks. There's a great bit at the start where Sean is just kind of standing there with a drink and the fireworks go off like a few feet in front of him. He's just so unfazed taking a sip. It's great. He has kind of this great subtle stage presence because it's just his own thing.
Minimalist.
Yes. Who else joins him on stage later on for Lazy-itis Mark?
Oh, that guy Carl Denver.
Mr. Top Gun himself.
Yeah.
Who, compared to all these young men dancing about on lots of drugs, he's just this kind of old guy in his jacket and Top Gun hat, standing quite rigidly with a mic up to his mouth, singing like he's doing karaoke.
It's so weird. And his thing is like he yodels. His vocal style is so different from Sean Ryder's.
They were just trying stuff though.
Yeah. That's the thing.
Happy Mondays.
The Happy Mondays musical style is just stuff. When you're listening to a Happy Mondays track, you're not focusing on the details. You're focusing on the mix, the swirl.
This is what I'm saying. This is why I like it so much. I just want it to wash over me.
Much like Fallen Angels washes over you.
Yeah. Maybe that's just it. Maybe I just like baths.
Yeah, I think...
I haven't taken a bath in years. I don't smell, I just shower. I'd like to clarify that now.
Don't want to think too much.
Is that it? Have we cracked me?
Yeah.
So we've established on this podcast, this is like a weird therapy session. I like pretty colours and I don't like to think much. I am 5 years old.
And you're concerned about people you once knew.
Yeah, and I draw on all universal themes. So yeah, I'm just a kid. I'm 5 years old.
I'm glad we've established this.
Yeah, I feel like we really worked through something today.
Well, I'll see you next week. Our hour's over.
How hard is it going to be if we did edit in such a way that this hits at the 1 hour and 1 second mark? Sean also likes to play other people's instruments. At one point he just pulls a tambourine out, which may have been Bez's. He was definitely on the maracas most of the time. But he also at one point just starts taking, I think he has sticks, he'd just be slapping them, like slapping the cymbals. He's just there to have fun.
He's better on the tambourine than Noel Gallagher is, I'll tell you that.
Is that a thing?
He always plays the tambourine in his concert, Tony.
Does he really?
Oh, one of the Gallaghers
Can't
does.
say I've seen a lot of Oasis or Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds. Is that the lot he's
I can't stand Noel Gallagher. Liam's the better one.
Is he?
He is. Noel's a fucking
He's a Twitter one though, isn't he?
Yeah, well, Noel just writes fucking Beatles songs. Liam writes actual decent tunes.
You say that they write Beatles songs. The bits from the kind of melody from Lazy-itis is just Ticket to Ride.
That's true. But what would you rather listen to? Ticket to Ride or Lazy Itis?
Depends on the day, doesn't it?
It's true. What would you rather listen to? Step On or He's Gonna Step On Me Again?
How am I this?
Yeah, obviously.
One thing I was kind of I meant let down by was I read the track list beforehand in the back of the box, and the last track was Rope for Luck, which is probably my favourite Happy Monday song.
Fair enough.
But I prefer the album version, and they played like the club mix, which in context for this, it makes sense. You want to end with everyone on a high.
Is the club mix the single version?
I think so. It's definitely the video. If you were to look up the song on YouTube, the video version is that. It's quite an interesting video. It's Sean Ryder standing in the middle of a dance floor, there's like a camera on him, with everyone around him like dancing, and he's just like this, like singing at the camera. It's quite a good video, but unfortunately, it's not the version of the song I like.
Oh.
But it does end with like the kind of trancey club beats playing out as they walk off stage, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's a good way to leave the stage and finish your encore. So it was probably the right decision. It was just, a bit of a letdown.
I did enjoy this little bit after it finished where it was just... I don't even know what he said. He just mumbled something.
He was speaking Spanish a lot of the time.
Yeah, what's all that about?
There would be points he'd be on the stage where he'd just start speaking Spanish into the mic. But very little Spanish. He'd be like, adios, senora. And he'd just be like, cha-cha-cha.
Maybe it was an Ibiza thing. Didn't they send him to Ibiza at some point?
Probably. They sent him to the Bahamas after this for that album, that failure of an album.
And then they came up without the vocals.
Yeah, everybody go watch 24 Hour Party, people.
Good film.
Great Steve Coogan film.
Indeed. Rowetta has a cameo in that. Also watch the episode of Bargain Hunt featuring Bez and Rowetta, where they go against Jarvis Cocker and the other one from Pulp.
A real clash of the early 90s Titans.
Yeah, and Bez and Rowetta win, but then it turns out that they sold their thing to Bez's mate.
That was his bird, wasn't it?
His bird. And then they were like, oh yeah, you can't do that. And then they made Bez hand over the £8 out of his own pocket.
Classic British daytime television. Watched a lot of Bargain Hunt when I was back at school and I was off for exams.
I used to
sit in front of the TV with whatever was on. Bargain Hunt.
I used to listen to Jarvis Cocker's Sunday service on BBC Six Music.
Didn't do that.
Yeah.
I think that's it for this tape. It was just a bit of a fun watch for us. It's always nice when these third tapes are kind of just nice to watch.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them aren't great.
No. But you can just stick on the Happy Mondays.
Yeah.
You can just stick on music.
Yeah.
We always have a good chat about that. We do that anyway. So, on to the next week's tapes.
Do you want to show me what you have?
Sure thing. I'll pass it over to you.
The Bridges of Madison County, a Clint Eastwood movie.
Yeah, it's Clint's birthday on the 31st of this month.
Ah.
I believe. Or 30th. One of the two.
That's nice.
Happy birthday, Clint.
I actually saw in the other room on your calendar you've made a note. It just says Clint's birthday and you've drawn a picture of a gun.
A Magnum 44. The most powerful handgun in the world.
Good stuff.
Yeah, we've been watching a lot of Clint Eastwood films, 3 at a time. So on Clint's birthday, we will probably watch 3 Clint Eastwood films.
Interesting. Well,
what's your film?
I'm really happy for you.
Thank you.
I have this.
It is... Oh, God. It's Cocktail, the Tom Cruise film.
Yeah.
Where he plays a bartender.
Yeah.
You know what I think of when I think of Cocktail? I think
Cocktails?
of the scene in the novel of American Psycho where Patrick Bateman meets Tom Cruise in an elevator and says, I loved you in Bartender. And Tom Cruise says, you mean Cocktail? And then Patrick Bateman is so humiliated he kills a homeless man.
Did you describe that as a novelisation?
Almost.
Yeah, I don't know what possessed me to buy this.
I like Tom Cruise.
Yeah, I don't know why. Yeah.
I mean, not as a person that much.
I thought it'd be a nice fun thing to watch.
I mean, it's Tom at his peak.
It is Tom at his peak. I do like 80s Tom.
Yeah.
Are we calling him Tom now?
Tom's our friend.
Yeah.
Is that the hat I hear rustling? It is.
Give it a good shake and rustle. There you go.
Look at that rhythm I'm getting going. Put that down.
I always have to edit down how long it takes. It's like rustle, rustle, rustle. Dead air for 4 seconds.
Right, I'm going to open the thing. 16.
So,
Okay.
you have your eyes closed?
Yep.
I'm handing it you now.
Right.
Have a look. That's the back.
Oh my god. Did you buy this for my benefit? Of course you did. What am I on about?
Tell everyone what it is.
It's a history of the Black Country.
Mark, where are you from?
I am from Walsall, in the Black Country.
Hey!
And we often talk about the Black Country.
I'm looking forward to learning about your culture. I can
Me
finally
too.
understand you.
It's a sometimes amusing tour of the region, including Dudley, Netherton, West Bromwich, Oldbury, Halesowen, Cradley Heath, Stourbridge, Brierley Hill, Wolverhampton, Willenhall, Wednesbury, Walsall,
Oi, oi,
and
oi.
Tipton. Notably not Birmingham. It's not in the Black Country.
Well, you'll get to share all your Black Country hot takes next week.
Jesus Christ. This is... You've got an outsider's perspective, you've got an insider's perspective.
What more could you want? I'm looking forward to next week now.
So am I.
Excellent stuff.
You are.
I
I'm trying to think of more Black Country things. Tell you off, Dark over Bill's mothers.
I know that one. Bill's mother.
Oh, I'll take the one up the cut.
Maybe I'll learn some more phrases from this.
Yeah. Maybe I'll go in video form.
So with that, I think we should wrap up this podcast. I should remind everyone that if you enjoy this podcast, feel free to follow us on Twitter @OnTapesPodcast. Or if you want to send us a nice email or a bad email, we'll take either. The email address for the podcast is ontapes.podcast@gmail.com. Feel free to share thoughts. Tell us your favourite Black Country saying. Anything else? Any closing remarks, Mark?
I was Mark Robotham. This is an On Tapes production.
Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.